and welcome back to Drum Key. It is 2025, a whole new year of Drum Key happening here. This is the podcast where we talk about everything drums, drummers, and drum industry. Hopefully we have some unique perspectives running a drum shop here. Today, we are recording, as we do always, in our home away from home, Drums, Etc., the Drummers Pro Shop.
In beautiful Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Wow. Sean.
It is beautiful today.
I had a Red Bull. I should be more fired up than this, but I'm not. I'm getting there.
It is
beautiful. And beautiful Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Thank you.
There you go. There. Thank you very much. He walks off the set. Yeah. We are joined. I'm Adam Steck. This is Sean Groff. He's the Batman to my Robin. And we're joined today by an incredible drummer, cool dude, and local legend. I'm adding that to the
vocal.
Local.
Oh, I thought you said vocal.
I'm vocal legend.
I thought you said local legend.
Hey. The drummer for the Doobie Brothers, founding drummer for Vertical Horizon, Ed Toth. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, man.
I love you guys. I appreciate the support, man. You guys have been so good to me.
And we've talked about doing this for, I feel like 2 years. It feels like.
Probably.
We've like, we got to get you on the podcast. We've got to get you on the podcast. And now, we did sit down with you briefly at the Delaware Drum Show.
Correct.
So that was awesome. So we have a little bit of experience doing this with each other here. But I feel like this was a long time coming.
I'm really excited about it. We've talked about a lot of stuff. I mean, that seems to be the way it is with us, right? Hey, can you do a drum clinic? Sure, a month before. Sorry, man, I can't do it. You know?
We're making it all happen.
And
now.
even we were supposed to do this yesterday, and I got called for a gig, so here we are.
It's what we do. Yeah. It's what we do. And I had to move it up because I have a rehearsal tonight.
That's right. I was beginning to think this was never going to happen. And I wanted to say that too. I feel like this has been like 2 years in the works. It really hasn't been, but it feels as though it has been.
Yeah. Well, here we are.
It's all good. Here we are, and we're doing what we know best, which is not actually playing the drums. It's talking drums. It's talking drums. We do that better than playing.
I think most drummers talk drums better than they play.
Yeah, talking, as Matt Greiner said, he was a guest last year on our show. He said, he was referencing drum clinics, and he said, talking's the easy part.
Yeah.
It's actually playing and putting it together, which is the hard part, which we'll talk about your clinic that you did at the PA Drum Show here coming up shortly. But first, the first half of our show, we like to talk drums, and I have some prepared topics, some from the audience, some from our brains. That's a scary thought. But we're going to start out with a segment called Crank It Up, Turn It Down.
Is one of you guys playing on that?
That's me.
That's fantastic.
That is all
Did you play bass too?
Yeah.
That's all. Did you really?
Yeah.
That's great.
And it took me that was cobbled together from 20 takes.
And that was the best take.
Technically, that is me playing
It's
bass.
an edit.
It's an edit. That part.
Those 8 bars. What did it take? Listen, 4 days?
I have to say, the drums 5 minutes.
Right.
The bass took days. But no, actually putting that together, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. It was really awkward or odd for me. I had the goal in my head of playing for 10 seconds for a transition and coming up with 5 or 6 different grooves that work that I could play a bass track to and just have a bass and drums, just the rhythm section. But for taking, trying different tempos out and everything, like having a time limit is a really weird goal when you go to record. Have you ever done anything like that?
Having a time limit?
Having like recording, but your goal was something really odd and specific.
No, I know the movie queue guys have that kind of stuff.
Oh, I can't imagine.
TV guys doing TV sessions. It's like, okay, here's this little thing. Although they kind of know going into it, here's what it is.
Right.
And it's either written out or it's like, okay, this is going to be 8 bars or 12 bars. Greg Bissonette plays a lot of the, I forget what they call them, not tags, but he plays a lot of the stuff on Friends.
Oh, yeah.
Like where they come in for a commercial and there's maybe 6 bars of music.
Right. Just like a little thing, a little groove, and then it's out.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'd love those checks, man. Those would be some nice.
I can imagine it's something like maybe a band on a late night show would have to do as well. Like when you're coming back from the break, and you you got that countdown, and you know how much time you have left, and you got to hit your cues and everything.
Yeah, and I used to when I was in high school, I used to videotape Late Night with David Letterman because that band was on fire.
Absolutely.
And Paul just had that dialed in, and they would just sort of look at Paul, and you could see he'd always give an arm up, like, okay, we're taking it out,
Yeah.
But they had that stuff dialed in, man.
Letterman was my favorite late night host ever, like talk show guy. He was the best.
Yeah, that was great
Yeah.
stuff, and that was when they were still in the '80s. Because I'm older, they were still a 4-piece. It was just bass, guitar, keys, and drums.
Okay.
And it was a Steve Jordan at first, and then Anton. So fun stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And fun fact about Letterman: have you ever seen the compilation of him going over the drummer? He always comments about the drums, like nice drums. Are those your drums, or do you rent the? Like it cracks me up, you know, like if they're backline.
Have you ever seen the Anton Fig drum video? He had an instructional VHS tape out back in the day, and Letterman actually gets on the set and he plays too. Yeah, he's goofing around. He's like, "This is my favorite beat here," and he does this and he's doing that.
Yeah.
But no, not really. No, but he's such a fan of drums. He really is.
Yeah,
And he would always come over and comment to the drummer, ask him if it was his set or a rental set, and sometimes he would even buy the set. I saw a video where that happened, where the guy, in retrospect, they showed the clip, and he goes, "Actually, Letterman did buy my drum set that night."
Wow,
so
That's cool. That's cool. So, Crank It Up, Turn It Down.
Crank it up, turn it down.
Is our segment that we talk about either controversial drum habits or something that a drummer does or plays or sets up in a certain way. Typically, is what we talk about. That might be your style, might not be. There's no right or wrong answer. We're just all kind of weighing in on it, getting loosened up here in the studio a little bit. It's an icebreaker, if you will. All right. Crank It Up, Turn It Down. The first-time play-alongs that Drumeo has been putting out, where this is the first time this artist has ever heard this song, and they do a play-along with a drumless track. Crank it up, turn it down. You dig it, crank it up. You don't, turn it down.
I'll crank it up. I enjoy him. I like him.
Turn it down.
Don't like it?
Don't hate it, but I don't know. It's a weird thing to me. You know, you've got these people, these legends in there, and so many places to go with them. And he does do cool stuff with the interviews and things like that.
Yeah.
But then, like, hearing a song for the first time, I mean, I think, I don't mean to sound like a negative Nelly, but it's got the pros that it has is somebody saying, okay, I haven't heard this before. Here's how I'm hearing it. So I think it's cool for younger players to
see the process.
But then to also get a different interpretation. Like, it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be this. So maybe I'm more in the middle of it, but I don't need to see Stuart Copeland playing Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Was it a little disappointing? I did watch that, and I felt like underwhelmed with it. I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird. Well, like, he shouldn't be playing that. I don't know what it is. Or like, I'm scratching my head thinking, like, you mean to tell me you've never heard this song? Like, I find that hard to believe too. Stuart Copeland has never heard this Limp Bizkit song.
No, I believe that. I
Really?
believe that. Okay. Yeah, a lot of musicians that I know that have a lot of work, and or are deep into doing whatever their thing is, they don't listen to a lot of music.
Mike Portnoy just did one. It's a Taylor Swift song, and he's like, I've never heard this in the world, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm overall, I'll crank it up a little bit. I'm not going to crank it up the whole way. Overall, I think it's a cool concept, and it's like definitely, it's a little too clickbaity for me.
Yeah,
a little bit too much. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing, but like also, it's like, as long as everyone's having fun, who cares? Like,
well, ultimately, that's it. It's entertaining, to people. So, and a lot of that, I mean, we could talk we could do a whole thing on the Instagram thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's plenty of great entertaining stuff, and it's just like, oh, that's really cool. But you know what? I've seen it already. I don't need to see that guy playing 1,000,000 miles a minute anymore. I don't need to see that guy looking really good and blowing big band chops anymore. I'd rather see footage of them at a gig.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think this whole thing just started. It feels like where they take like Dennis Chambers and he plays a Tool song, and Chad Smith and he plays this song. So it feels like it's kind of run its course a little bit.
Yeah.
Like in a short amount of time too. Because at first I was very interested. Like they were like, tomorrow's the premiere. Dennis Chambers is going to play Tool. And I'm like, actually, that sounds kind of cool. Yeah. And then he does it, and you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I was kind of hyping myself up for a little bit. I was expecting something a little bit different. So now maybe it has jumped the shark a little bit. It is. I'm still going to crank it up.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a cool concept, but I think maybe very quickly it's overstayed its welcome.
That's the toughest thing about the social media thing, is, stuff is hot for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're off to something else. And people forget things too.
Yeah.
I mean, does anybody, remember the guy drinking cranberry juice to Fleetwood Mac on a skateboard? That lasted all of what? Like a couple of weeks. Even Mick Fleetwood did it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, great. And now it's just like, it's not even going to be a footnote in anything,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right.
So,
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another one. Crank it up, turn it down, counting drumming as cardio.
go
Go
ahead. No, you go first.
Count it down.
Count it down.
No, turn it down.
Turn it down.
Yeah, I think that it's almost like it's what's the term? Analytic. There's an exercise term. I can't. It's like when you're working out in the yard. Like, okay, you're burning some calories, but it's not real exercise where you're really concentrating on certain things. So I don't feel like you could meet any drummer out there who says, I stay in shape by drumming. Really,
Sure.
you have to take
Sure.
it to that next level, I believe. So
Yeah.
I don't count it as a proper exercise.
You
no.
don't think
I don't
it
think
counts?
so.
Yeah,
That's
if you're drumming correctly, your heart rate isn't like it is
Yeah.
when you're going
Sure.
on a brisk walk
Sure.
or jogging or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
turn
I'm
it
turning
down.
it down too.
Yeah.
I'm turning it down too. But I just think it's a funny concept.
Yeah.
People are like, well, drumming keeps you young. And I'm like, that's a brain thing.
Yeah, that's a mental thing.
That's not
full on.
Yeah.
That's absolutely not
Yeah.
because of like the physical action.
Agreed.
I also just PS because it's kind of related to this. Folks that don't know a lot about music, you can tell they come up to you after a show, they point out like, "Wow, you must be really tired. I couldn't believe you kept going after the song." It's always a song that I'm not working that hard.
Yeah.
Do you ever notice that? Like, maybe I look like I'm working harder, but like the songs that are really up tempo, I try to really do my homework so they're not taxing to me.
Right.
They're not taxing. As Sean saw me play with my country band, he said, "What'd you say? What'd you say?"
I don't know.
You said something like the only critique I have is that you made it look too easy.
I
or
did,
something like
yeah,
that.
I did.
I was like, oh jeez.
Yeah.
I was like, what a ham like da-da-da-da-da kind of
Yeah.
thing to say to me. All right, one more speed round here. Crank it up, turn it down. Having other drummers in the audience.
Ooh. I'll let you go first this time.
I'm going to say turn it up because I've said this before. It's easier to do a gig at Red Rocks in front of thousands of people than it is to do like
Okay.
a drum clinic in front of a room full of drummers. However, for me, it keeps me on my game. Like I'm a feet to the fire, grace under pressure kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I will panic. The drum clinic I did with you guys, it was just like all I thought about for the month leading up to it. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? Do I have my audio together? What songs should I do? Yada, yada, yada. And then I just kind of had this, there's going to be a bunch of drummers there. Some of them are better than me. And I just had this Zen moment of like, you know what? None of that matters. If
Right.
any musician is worth their salt, there's always something to learn from somebody. So hopefully I'll give somebody something that they can take away from it, even if it's like one thing, one little thing, even if it's what not to do.
Right.
As long as somebody got something out of it, then that's great. So it doesn't bother me knowing that there's drummers in the audience.
Sean, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'll crank it up. I've spent my whole adult life playing in front of other drummers, even here at the shop, and most of my friends are even drummers, so they'll come out and see me play. But the moment you said that, I thought about the recital we did, where I'm playing in a room full of drummers, all the students there. I'm a student. We're all students. Rick is there, Christy, blah blah blah. We're all hanging out, and Ed comes walking in the day before the drum show, and I look at you as like that next level drummer guy. Like, you're up here, in my opinion. So I got a little nervous
He
when
doesn't have
when
to
he
sell
walked in.
tickets for a show.
Yeah,
He doesn't
I
have to
really
sell
did.
tickets.
I get anxious before I play, and of course, if there's drummers there too, there's a little added like anxiousness.
Yeah.
But I felt it when Ed walked in the door.
Oh, well, dude. I mean, we're all just trying to do the same thing, right?
Right.
We're just ultimately, did I play better on this gig than I did on the last gig?
Yeah, that's what we try to
So, and the other thing too is the other way to look at it is there's probably always a drummer in the room, even if you don't know it.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. I think about that as well. If you're out on vacation or something, and you see a band play, and you come walking in, and I don't go up to the drummer either and just say, "Hey, I'm a drummer too." I'm just not that guy. And yeah, I'm just kind of discreetly, I'm a drummer observing, and you watch the drummer as we all do. So yeah, you're right. There's probably a drummer hanging out, and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no.
Yeah.
I'm cranking it up.
I'm
yeah.
overall cranking it up, but I'd be lying if I said that when I acknowledge who it is, if it's a great player, I don't have to I have to tell myself this doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
I have kind of that internal conversation of this doesn't change anything. Because I remember early on starting out, even to the point where it was I'm playing a show with someone and the other drummer's really good. Not even but I know he's probably watching because he's playing after us because we're opening for the band. Sometimes that would trip me up a little bit. But that was really early on kind of thing. But I still kind of say that to myself. I caught myself doing it at a show recently. Just being calm down. It doesn't matter.
That's it. It's to take a deep breath and just do your job. During an early Vertical gig, we were playing at a place in Charlottesville, Virginia called Tracks. And if you know anything about famous bands from Charlottesville, you know where this is going. I'm playing. We're halfway through the set, and everything's cool, and it's just kind of jamming. At one point, I just kind of look over to the monitor board, which was to my right, and Carter Beauford's there, looking at me and bopping his head, and I was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah.
Carter's here. And now there was talk that maybe he would have showed up because he had a history with Vertical Horizon. He played on the record before me. And but he come gig time he wasn't there, and it was all right, whatever. So mid gig I look over and he's there, and I'm just oh. And I was just oh my God, and I felt myself starting to get a little nervous, but then I finished that tune and just kind of looked over and nodded. And then I just kind of told myself take a deep breath. He was bopping his head. It could have been worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're here to do a job. Just do the job.
Mm-hmm. It's good
And
advice.
that was it. It's just I'm just playing music. Everybody's human. I've seen him mess up. I've got audio of Neil Peart messing up. Everybody's human. Everybody's human.
Yep.
That's it. You got to keep that in mind. Remember that. Cool. So if it's cool with you guys, we'll pop into our next segment, talk a little drum industry news. So you mentioned the name, the Daily Double. You hit the Daily Double. Neil
Ding,
Peart.
ding, 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 ding,
You
ding,
said
ding.
Neil Peart on our show.
Nice.
And that means we have to talk
that's
about it. But actually, drum industry news, something that just happened January 4th, I want to talk about.
Oh.
The Bubba Bash, a celebration of Neil Peart that you were a part of. If you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about it. Obviously, I know the basics of the premise, but it sounds like a really awesome show, and it seems like it went well, and we're after the fact. You can talk about it.
Sure.
And relax. You don't have to feel pressure anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
you
man.
did it.
Talk about pressure. That's another one. But yeah, man, it's called Bubba Bash. It's happened for 3 years now in Glenside, PA, at the Keswick Theater. It's organized mainly by a guy named Michael Mosbach, who was Neil's motorcycle riding partner.
Oh, okay.
So if you've ever read Neil's travelogue books and he talks about Michael or Mosbach, that's the guy he's talking about. Rode with him, I think, from Vapor Trails on. He was his riding partner and also the head security guy for the band. And also this band they're kind of half Jersey, half LA, but this Rush tribute band called Why Not. Really good Rush tribute band. Mm-hmm. They did this thing, and I did not play year one, but year two I got involved. I'm friends with Joe Bergamini, mm-hmm. and for those of you that don't know, Joe's a fantastic drummer and a great educator, and he's written a bunch of books. He wrote a book with Neil. He wrote the Gad book that just came out, the Stuart Copeland book, and he's done a lot of stuff for Hudson Music. I was having dinner with Joe one day, and I said, Bubba Bash, that looks like a fun time. I said, I know I don't know anybody, but if there's any way you could get me on that would be great. And so he did, and so I played 2024, and then just last week we did the third year, 2025, and it's a fundraiser for Cedars-Sinai brain cancer research.
Okay.
All dedicated in Neil's name. And it's kind of cool. They ask, why not? And Michael, they say, we ask everybody to donate $21.12 and you decide where the decimal point goes.
Hey, there you go.
And they've raised a lot of money. They've raised, 6 figures over the 3 years now.
That's excellent. That's awesome.
For that, which is great. And as a Rush fan, it's great to have a place to go to hear the music and to be around what I call Rush people.
Yes,
because it's the whole thing. The whole thing with Rush has been a shared experience for people, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of it. And they told me that I'm in. I can.
Your
I can
grandfather
check
into the
out
event.
anytime I'd like, but I can never leave.
Got it. Got it. So year one, you
Wrong-
played
wrong band.
You played one song, but this past year, I saw you played like 2 or 3, right?
Well, the first year I was just going to play Natural Science, and then about a week before the gig, I got a call from Tim Starachi, who's the bass player on Why Not, and he said, "Hey man, Bergamini fell off his bicycle and broke his hand. We need to farm out his tunes."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, what's he playing?" He said he's playing Subdivisions and the Prelude to Hemispheres. And I said, "Cool, I'll take Subdivisions," thinking I've got a week.
Yeah.
Prelude to Hemispheres, come on, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was already over rehearsing Natural Science because I wanted it to be really good. I've treated these gigs out as if I'm auditioning for Geddy and Alex, which of course is a pipe dream because they're retired and all that. But I wanted it to be that good, and I didn't want to have to think about it. I wanted to be able to go and play and have a good time.
Sure.
And that's music and drum parts that require thinking.
Absolutely.
And concentrating. So if you want to be able to go up there and not really think about it, you're going to have to put the time in. So I said, yeah, I'll do Subdivisions, thinking, okay, I played that in my basement more than I played the Prelude to Hemispheres when I was growing up. And Starachi said, nope, so-and-so's doing Subdivisions, you got the Prelude. And basically, hung up on me. You got the Prelude, click.
You got
You
this.
couldn't say no.
I couldn't say no. And so
Yeah.
it came off okay. It's actually pinned on my Instagram page.
That means you really like it.
They did a professional shot and a professional mix of the audio.
Good.
And
That's excellent.
It came off really well. Then this year they basically said, "What do you want to play?" And I said, "Oh, geez, So I ended up playing Limelight and Red Barchetta from Moving Pictures. And then that was kind of on the list. And I said, "Can we maybe do something that's not on the list?" I said, "I don't know how much time you guys have to learn material or whatever." But so I picked the song Driven from Test for Echo, which has got some back and forth 3s and 4s and all that. And it was a challenge to learn, and it was a lot of fun to play. And the whole night just went off great. And everybody prepares for it, and everybody's in the same headspace when they get there. It's like a long all-day sound check. There's no rehearsal. Basically, you get one run through with the band, and that's it. And then it's showtime.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're all watching each other at sound check,
Right.
and
But everyone also has the shared experience of the feelings and pressure. And,
Oh,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's that's so much better than having Neil's here and you're
we're
gonna
all
play
in the-
one song.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat. And
Right.
Jason Bittner and I were texting each other that week, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Dude, are you losing it?" I'm like, "Dude, I lost it a long time ago. I'm freaking out, And so it was just fun to know, okay, it's not just me, it's
Right.
these other guys.
Right.
But the whole experience this year was a little bit more laid back, not so much with the performing sort of jitters, but I knew what to expect. I knew what the theater looked like. I know who the people are.
Sure.
And all that kind of stuff. And the fact that I was invited back, I was honored to be asked to come back, and will do it every time that they ask me. So yeah, it's a great event, and I highly recommend it to anybody that can make it. I mean, some people have made it for 3 years. People have flown from all over.
Yeah. And it's like a public event that people can donate and buy tickets and go
Absolutely.
to. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And you don't have to donate to go. The price of admission is being donated, or part of it, I guess.
Right.
And they've got merch there that they sell. There's an online auction. They sell stuff at memorabilia and whatnot at the gig. So it's just a great event for a great cause, celebrating a great guy by playing that great music.
Right. I know you obviously are a huge fan of his, but can you talk a little bit about his influence and experiences with his music that was he the defining guy for you growing up?
He was one of them for sure.
Okay.
And for a long period of time, particularly when I was sort of, 8th grade through high school, there were other people I was listening to, but he was the main guy. Excuse me, I have to take a
Yeah,
sip of water.
no, you're good. Sean will cover for you. Go ahead, Sean. Cover for him.
Yeah. So
I'm
and
good. So you should have. That was your ventriloquist moment, or my ventriloquist
it
moment.
should have
Right?
been. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I should have put my hand behind Sean's.
Yeah.
Anyway, my entry point to Rush for like a lot of people was moving pictures when that came out, and I mean, I was gripped by that record, and then I was just all in. I bought every record afterwards, and I saw every tour since and including the Signals tour in '83. And I mean, I remember this distinctively. I was in 7th or 8th grade, and we were asked to bring in poems for our English class that reflected certain literary devices, and one of them was personification, and where basically I can't give you the Webster's dictionary of it, but it's sort of giving human,
characteristics of something that's not
to
living.
something inanimate or whatever. So I brought in the trees from Hemispheres. And just so it wasn't just the playing, like all of a sudden I was paying more attention to lyrics. I'd never really paid attention to lyrics in songs before.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden this guy had something to say. But the thing is as he grew as a lyricist throughout those 80s records, particularly on albums like Power Windows and Hold Your Fire, some of the material, it was like he was talking directly to me. Like, obviously he wasn't, but a song like Middletown Dreams from Power Windows, the song Mission from Hold Your Fire, which might be my favorite Rush song. A spirit with a vision is a dream with a mission. I was the kid in small town Connecticut that had designs on doing things that I knew I wasn't going to be able to do there. And he made me, some of his words made me think a little more like worldly before I had an opportunity to travel around the world. And like, we're not even talking about his drumming. Now you get into the drumming aspect of it, and it's just like, there's so much there to learn, and the takeaways are innumerable. I mean, there's just so many. But composition was a big thing for me. The actual composition of a drum part within the context of a song.
Right.
He just came up with so many cool, creative, original ways to play different things.
Yeah. And when I think about his playing, in my mind, I always think how intentional he was about everything. Very intentional. And a lot of my upbringing and like the music that I favor towards, and just personally, is a lot of like the folk stuff, and it's like there's so much feely
Yeah.
and play what comes to you and stuff. There's so much of that in that regard. And then like progressive music is very much more calculated. So I was always pushed back against that. But I remember which one was it? It was one of his DVDs. The one where he's like on. You can probably tell me you're an expert here.
Yeah.
One of his videos where he ends up in the middle of a lake, and he's like, "This is a circular motion," and Freddie Gruber's on it, and
Work in Progress.
Work in Progress. Thank you. I remember I was gifted Work in Progress at one point, and I remember watching that thing like a whole bunch of times and like being really interested. And I'm like, here's someone that's doing the kind of thing that I'm doing. He's a drummer playing, but being so intentional about like how the drums are being set up and like what part goes where. And I think everyone has their own ratio and balance of that. But like you said, once you get out on stage, you want to be able to be comfortable enough to just, feel the room and feel the band.
And I thought that was a great thing. And the lesson there for me was, okay, here's probably the world's greatest drummer, certainly sitting on the top, he was inducted into like the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame when he was like 30,
Yeah.
And here's him saying, you know what? I want to get better. I need to change my approach.
Absolutely.
I'm tired of trying to hit through the snare drum to hit the floor. Like, that can't be right. What can I do? And for somebody who's reached that point to say, okay, there's got to be more.
Yep.
Was a lesson learned. And the other thing too with Neil that I like to talk about that doesn't get talked about a lot is the idea of the drum set as an orchestra. It's not just kind of it is one instrument, but it's not one instrument because a cymbal is an instrument. A a ride cymbal is one instrument, a crash cymbal is another instrument, a splash cymbal is another instrument, concert toms are an instrument, closed toms are an instrument, timbales, snare, kick, all different. And at that time, the big three for me in sort of the early 80s, like 83, 82, 83, Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, and I had discovered Bill Bruford's playing on the 80s King Crimson records, Discipline in particular. And all three of those guys showed me that a drum kit is a glorious musical garden of sounds. Neil with all his stuff. Copeland with the way he played the hi-hat. I mean, his hi-hat kick snare alone is an orchestra.
Absolutely.
The higher pitched toms with no muffling. The splash cymbals, the octabands. And then Bruford with that Crimson kit that was just this mutant, kick snare, one rototom. I'm not going to use a ride cymbal. I'm going to ride on sort of like an octabands.
Yeah.
And I've got electronic drums in here as well. Just so much to take from all of that stuff.
Well, so far your Wikipedia page has totally panned out to be correct because it does name Peart, Copeland, and Bruford as your three main influences on your Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I mean,
Which I had to snoop that this morning before.
Sean conducts serious research.
No, that's-
Wikipedia you
yeah.
5 minutes before you walked in the door.
I love it. I should have Wikipedia'd myself. I don't even know who put that up there.
Have you ever seen the Wikipedia fact or fiction things that are floating around out there?
I know my birthday's fiction on the Wikipedia, but I haven't bothered to have anybody change it.
I was going to print it off
makes
to
me
see
younger.
what was correct and what wasn't correct on there, but I didn't do it.
Yeah, there's a
That would've
bunch.
been fun.
Yeah, I will say just real quick, last Wikipedia comment. Your years active are also my years active as a human being.
Oh,
So
okay.
You've been doing this a lot longer than I have.
Well, I'm older than you guys, But yeah, I mean, those guys were a big thing. And, now as I've gotten older and have been able to look back, there were certainly drummers before then. But that's when I was really finding my voice, as it were.
Yeah.
And those three guys were really important in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, I feel like we all have like a list or a few iconic drummers, or at least like a top three that are kind of those drummers that have influenced our playing, or you're a big fan of their writing or their influence in the drumming world. And actually, I didn't hip either of you guys to this, that we're announcing this on the show, but we're leaning into it this year
Okay.
at Drums Etc. So part of our events for this year is we have a drum icon series, and we're doing drummer tribute shows. So we're partnering with 627 Drum Studios, which is closer to Lancaster, downtown Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And we're going to have a series of tribute shows. The first one, which I haven't officially announced, we'll probably put out the flyers and everything tomorrow-ish from when we're recording this podcast, is Phil Collins.
Oh, great.
And so it's going to be, the basic understanding of these sessions and seminars, these events, is going to be, it's about 50-50 history, talking, playing, influence, and 50% playing songs from their plethora of music.
That's great.
So the basic premise, obviously, the drum icons is highlighting these people. So we're definitely going to get someone in here to do Neil for sure. We'll talk, because you just did a whole Bubba bash.
Yeah,
I mean, come
I'm
on.
happy to talk about any of those guys.
But we've been talking with some artists. Some want to collab on it. But a big thing for us being a drum shop is that the gear matches up.
Yeah.
So not only are we looking for people who have the skill set and the knowledge to talk and demonstrate some stuff, but if anyone has accurate gear because you're a super fan, or whether it's period accurate or it's the modern version of it, we'll take the closest we can get to the actual gear they played or recorded with. The iconic gear. We're looking and actively recruiting people. So if you guys know anyone, or you might happen to be that drummer that could do a killer tribute show, reach out to us at the shop. We'd love to add you to the list and do as many as we can this whole year.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that. But yeah, let's start. Speaking of gear, let's pop into our next segment, Hall of Fame. We busted that. You recognize that one? Recognize that drum?
I do recognize that drum. It's still here.
An old friend.
Not
I
for
actually-
long.
I actually played on a Dynasonic last night at the Horse Inn.
Oh, really?
A jazz gig. Yeah,
Oh,
somebody had put like a fiber skin head on the top of it, and I had to manipulate it a little bit. It had the thing on the bottom, which I know this one does not.
The rail, yeah.
So I had to manipulate it a little bit, but it ended up sounding pretty good.
Yeah.
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 Not
absolutely.
enough to pull this back.
Pull this back into your arsenal.
For those of you that don't know, this is a drum I'm selling at the shop.
So our only goal of this segment is to sell Ed's drum. It is to sell. No, it's not. No, but we like to induct some iconic pieces of gear into the Drum Key Hall of Fame. Everyone else has a Hall of Fame. We made our own. Let's just build it up. But this episode's inductee into the Drum Key Hall of Fame is the Rogers Dynasonic snare drum, and we've got quite a number here.
You got a couple, yeah.
We've got Ed's defunct metal one without the bottom rail console.
Does not have the bottom rail.
But it belonged to Ed Toth of the Doobie Brothers and Vertical Horizon.
And it's for sale here at Drums Etc. right now.
It
It can be
sounds
yours.
pretty good, too.
Yeah, sounds absolutely great.
Good sounding drum.
And then we have a couple of the brand new Dynasonics. So if you guys haven't been paying attention in the drum world, Rogers is back. Rogers USA is a thing. They're making new production drums and drum sets in the US of A, out there in California.
Can I say one thing about
Absolutely.
this particular drum?
Yes.
Because I know the nerds are going to ask.
Yes.
1974.
1974.
Yeah.
There we go. So the Rogers Dynasonic was originally released in 1962. That makes it 63 years old.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
I know.
That makes it 63 years old. The main feature. Grab that other one there too, Sean.
Yeah.
What year
I
is that?
can grab one. These are brand new.
Yeah.
Oh, these are brand new.
Yeah, like-
Brand
Okay.
spanking new.
Wow.
Maybe just last year.
The idea of that bottom rail console is that you can change the tension and sizzliness of your wires without fussing with your strainer. Or you break it off,
Like
or
Ed.
you lose it, like Ed.
Well, there's a story behind this drum.
I would love to hear the story.
I acquired that drum for free, basically. Of course, now people are going to be like, "You got it for free. I'll give you $50 for it."
Turn it a profit.
It did not have the bar. I was at a studio that I was recording at, and they had a couple of house kits at the studio, and they all needed new heads.
Sure.
So I arranged for a bunch of drum heads to come in, and I put all new heads on the. I think it was 2 house kits that they had there. Tuned them all up for them and everything. And this was an empty shell. It was just an empty shell with the rims and the lugs, but it didn't even have any heads on it.
Right.
And I just, he's like, "Man, let me give you some money or something." I said, "You know what? You want to give me that drum shell over there? I could do something with
There
that."
you go.
And so that's how that happened.
Make that happen.
And it is a common thing to see these Dynasonics come through the door without the bottom rail on it. And if that doesn't matter to you, that adjustment here, the snare drum plays well without it, really,
big time.
and sounds good without it anyway. I think this is a cool concept and everything else, but I'm kind of a non-fussy type of drummer anyway. So, quite frankly, I think I'd rather have without the rail on it.
Yeah, for me,
That's
it
just
was
me.
always just a clunky sort of thing. And then you've got sonic issues, maybe not with the newer ones, but you had some sonic issues with the other ones too. Like here's more resonating metal.
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
kind of thing.
Sure.
So,
But you know what? If that floats your boat and you really enjoy this kind of stuff, then this is the drum for you because you can really, really dial this sucker in. And also, the cool thing is that now that Rogers is producing drums again, they are producing their lugs and even the rail. So if you happen to have
Ed,
this drum out
you
there,
buy a rail
not
for
you,
your
but if you want to get the rail for it, you can.
Yeah.
All the parts are retrofitted to fit the old drums too. So we're
yeah,
in business.
you could outfit my drum with a rail for
$72.
very inexpensively. So
$72.
there it is.
I just quoted a price yesterday as of when we were recording this. It was $72.
Less than $100, you can have the
There
rail.
you go. There you go. But yeah, Rogers Dynasonics, absolutely an iconic snare drum. For those folks out there that have a giant snare drum collection, if you have more, I'm going to put a number on it. If you have more than 13, that's right, it's an odd number, 13 snare drums, you have at least one Dynasonic if you're a collector.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
Dynasonic
that's my
in that
number.
collection.
Yeah.
That's my
Absolutely.
number because of the sound and the iconic look and feel. They're offering Dynasonics in a couple different variations, all the way anywhere from 5-inch or 5.5, up to 8-inch depths now. All of the wood drums have the re-rings inside of there. I don't know if you can see that, but super cool. All of the new Roger stuff. By the way, quick plug for the Roger stuff. We'll go deeper into the whole reworking of Rogers, I think, in our next episode with John Hickey.
Yep.
But we're huge fans of what they're doing, making the parts cross-compatible with, using the same molds with the older stuff. Absolutely killer move. Folks that have been weary of Rogers, there were eras where they were all overseas and they tried to make things less expensive to compensate and compete with other folks. Don't worry. These drums are expensive again. You're welcome. You asked for it. They're now expensive again. But they're absolutely killer sounding. These two, we just did film some demos last week, and I was playing on them, and I got them all dialed in and tuned up, and they sound absolutely killer. Absolutely killer. So yeah, Dynasonic snare drum, the 19th inductee into the Drum Key Hall of Fame.
You don't see snare drums nowadays with a internal muffler either, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
they're still doing that. But yeah, this is a quality drum, beautiful shell, and of course we have the Ed Toth. Come pick it up.
Pick up the Ed Toth.
Give me a call. I'll ship it to you.
I'll give you a deal.
Yes.
Do you want me to?
It's already a deal. It's $2.99.
I'll meet you here at the shop when you buy it. How's that?
There you go. There's your incentive. Or you hop over here to the brand new one, Purple Diamond Pearl, super killer finish.
Yeah.
Is back in
Great
action.
Finish.
There's a lot of old black and white photos with that finish that they detailed up in the catalog to show you, like, this is actually what they were playing.
That's right.
So that's a vintage finish that's back, just like Rogers. So we're really excited to have them and support them in our shop. So we got a couple kits, a few snare drums, in drums, etc. now. Yeah,
It's killer, man.
absolutely killer. So let's pop into our next segment called Quick Question.
I'm afraid.
All right.
Quick question implies quick answer. And
Quick question.
I think you know by now I'm not good at the quick answer.
Hey, I'll tell you what. The genesis of the Quick Question segment was questions that did not have quick answers. That was our idea of it for last year. This year, we're switching it up. So this year, we wanted to hear from you guys. We're putting out episodes monthly. We're going to be interacting with you guys a lot. We put out a quick post ahead of time telling everyone Ed's coming. Give us your questions and get a little audience participation going on.
We got a couple.
We got a couple bites. So I absolutely want to thank everyone for reaching out. By the way, you can comment on posts having to do with Drum Key. You can DM us anytime. You can come in the shop. We actually have a drum downstairs where you can fill out a little topic suggestion, throw it in the bucket. No matter what, if you reach out to Drums, etc., we'll get your question in the pot to pick from before we prepare for an episode. So
yeah.
We've got a couple comments. So yeah, let's see. These are all for Mr. Ed Toth. So here we go. First quick question from Deirdre Nestline on Instagram. What is the single most beneficial thing you do in practice? For example, repeatedly listening to a song you're learning, drum fill practice, or drumstick hand exercises. What do you do? What's the single most beneficial thing you do in practice?
The honest answer to that question is I don't practice nearly as much as I used to. I do warm up before shows. I do a lot of hand stuff, a lot of old, maybe drum corps exercises, or literally I'll just play like 8 on the right hand, 8 on the left hand, just try to get the blood flowing and all that kind of stuff. Growing up, the most important thing I ever did that I recommend to anybody, and I'm assuming that people still do this, is I played along to records. And I was talking to somebody recently and thought that it has become a good idea now as a sort of de facto instructor, mentor, whatever, to tell people to try to practice to records that were made before 1980. Simply because most of those records were made without a click track. And what that requires is a lot more listening and feel to where the music's going, if it's speeding up, if it's slowing down. You guys are probably tired of hearing me say this, but I always use Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones as the example, right? Because it starts off at one tempo and is blazing much faster by the end. But it feels great all the way through.
Yep.
So, yeah, playing along with records and doing anything like that to hone your listening skills. And also, don't be afraid to put messages out to local musicians or play with other musicians. I feel like that's the thing that's getting lost the most in the social media era. When I was a kid, I would get together with a guy that I knew had a electric guitar and say, come over. And he knew like two riffs. He knew Eric Clapton's version of Cocaine by J.J. Cale.
Yep.
And he knew Give Me Three Steps by Skinner. And he didn't even know the whole songs.
Yeah,
he just knew like the riffs. And we would play them over and over again. And it was such a great thing because now all of a sudden I wasn't playing along to a record. I was playing along with a person. Yeah. So I would encourage anybody that is looking to do that kind of thing to find other people that are looking to do that kind of thing on other instruments, and just say, hey, do you know any songs? What do you like? Like, hey, well, why don't we learn this song and this song, and let's get together next week and play them. It's that Dave Grohl quote about like getting together in your garage and sucking with other people until you just one day you're just got a grip on it. You're like, oh, okay, this is cool. I want to do this. So. Short answer.
Yeah,
I agree with you, and I think that it's weird because it changed, and I think it only changed within the past maybe 5 or 6 years. Where now all of a sudden a lot of the newer up and coming drummers that are coming in or calling are more concerned with playing in their in a little room that they make and playing in front of for Instagram and things like that. But it is much more important, I think, to get together with other musicians and play, and that's what makes you better. And you hit on something else that I think is very interesting too, and you said play to records before 1980. I never even really thought about that because everything is so produced nowadays and everything has to be perfect, and I know that you've been in the studio and you've cut hit records and things like that, and how like demanding it is to be perfect and precise. But there's something to be said about those older records where the drummers are flying by the seat of their pants and they're playing, and you don't have a producer saying, well, you kind of hit the rim over here a little bit, so we're going to take that part out and we're going to put this part in. Like, no, what you hear on those records is what that drummer played, and I think that that's important to do. And I want to go home and play some Black Sabbath records now because of that, because I know that Bill Ward was just nailing it, and he wasn't like overly produced, and they're playing the songs from like how the next night he plays it might not be the exact same way he did it in the studio.
Yeah, and don't bite off more than you can chew. I mean, you don't want to go, oh, okay, I'm going to go back to pre-1980. I'm going to get Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull and try to play along. No, go get a Stax record. Get Melting Pot by Booker T and the MGs. It's simple 2/4 stuff. Learn how to own playing along to something like that and grooving like that, then move on to some of the stuff that's a little bit more complicated. Everybody's trying to run before they can walk these days, sure. I feel like, and you just need to like get to the heart of what it is we're doing, which is groove and feel. If you don't have that, all the other stuff doesn't matter. You could be Chops Fest, and if it's not grooving or doesn't have any kind of feel, I can only speak for myself, but I'm not interested.
No.
So
I think everyone knows that, whether they can articulate it or not being a drummer, perhaps someone listening to something, there's some energy or something that's off, and you can feel it. I want to touch on something real quick, because you both kind of skirted it a little bit, and it kind of goes back to this rehearsal question or practicing question, is when you're running songs and playing along to records and stuff, there's pressure, and this is one of the number one piece of advice that I give folks that are starting to learn songs for the first time. My girlfriend right now is learning to play drums, and she's like getting together with her first band, like getting stuff together, whatever. And like we talk about this all the time, but she's very much write things out, and I'm more feel and that kind of thing. Just naturally, you're geared one way or the other. But we talk about this a lot. This isn't necessarily just for her. It's literally something I talk about with students all the time. Just because they play it, it doesn't mean on that way on this record doesn't mean you have to play it exactly like that.
Right.
There's no like that drummer's likely not saying. I mean, we're talking a lot about Rush earlier. Not saying there aren't iconic drum parts that like people like in the audience pay attention to, and you play note for note because it's iconic. or something like that. But for the most part, especially with those older records, that studio recording, that track is the only track in existence where that song's been played exactly like that.
Right.
So don't lose your mind or pull your hair out over those little details. If you have the basic groove going, you have all the iconic punches, pulls, breaks, stops, the band is going to be through the roof. I mean, they're going to be super excited to have you being that accurate. No one's expecting you to do every ghost note exactly the exact same way, especially starting out. Take that pressure off of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I did what some people would consider a sin. You know, when I played Driven at Bubba Bash last week, I added a fill in one spot because it felt natural to me and it made it easier for me to feel the section that was coming up directly after it. And it's like, okay, I know that fill's on the record. I don't care. I've honored the part.
Yeah.
And it was a very simple, very simple fill. But it worked. It made it easier for me to get into the next section of that song. So yeah, it doesn't have to be right on. You want to be in the ballpark, obviously. But yeah, I mean, Stax Motown, if you want to learn groove and feel, just play along to those records all day.
Good
Absolutely.
advice.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to pop into our last segment here where we kind of get to know Ed a little bit better and poke his brain a little bit more, called Between the Plies. All right, so Between the Plies, this section is all focused on Ed, so we're going to dive in. First and foremost, I almost didn't mention this in like my notes or prep or anything. Sean's like, well, I wore my PA drum show shirt because we're going to be talking about that. I'm like, duh. Ed was our part of our Pennsylvania drum show this year. If you guys don't know, the PA drum show is like a drummer's heaven flea market mixed with a trade show. It's a little bit of everything. Collectors, inventors, drum enthusiasts show up to buy and sell stuff. And then also, because we're a drum shop, we've enhanced the show a little bit and we bring out the industry reps. So this year we had Gretsch, we had Schlagwork Percussion, we had Meinl, we had Zildjian, and we had Peisty. So the PA Drum Show is a nice marketplace kind of event. There's drum circles happening out front, food and drinks. There's a version of the Drum Key podcast was there recording all day this year. But then kind of like part of the grand finale of the show is a drum clinic every year. This year, we did it. We got Ed Toth.
We finally got it.
We were going to do it last year, but this year ended up working out better. So we made it happen. So I just want to ask you just perfect, honest feedback. I'm not trying to fish for compliments.
Sure.
What was the whole experience like for you as far as a clinic, putting that together? I know it's not something you do that often. So I just want to talk about that experience from your perspective.
The short answer, see what I did there? Yeah. Is I told somebody afterwards that doing that clinic has made me totally open to doing drum clinics whenever and wherever.
Nice.
Which
awesome.
I did not feel that way beforehand.
Yeah.
I felt like, what do I have to say that people haven't already said and maybe said better? I'm a groove player. That's generally what I do the most. I'm not a chops guy. I'm not going to go up there and blow a solo and do that. So I just said, well, I'll just do what I do.
Yep.
And so I played along to a couple of tunes. The Vertical Horizon hit. I played a couple of Doobie tunes that they graciously allowed me to do, and basically opened it up for Q&A, and which I, as a person who's been to drum clinics before, that part is always my favorite because I feel like that's what the people want. Ask the people while they're in the room with you, what do you want to know about? I give you my perspective, my opinion, my experience with something, and keeping in mind that that's one way to do things or to approach things or whatever. But I've been doing this for almost 40 years, so there's something there. So that's what we did, and I find with the Q&A segments that most people have really informed, focused questions, which then would lead me to, okay, here's the answer to your question, and then there's always sort of I can't talk about this without talking about this.
Opens up another
Exactly.
door.
It opens up another door, exactly. And so that
Those are the best.
that
Nice
seemed-
segues and
it
everything.
seemed to flow. I thought
Yeah.
at the
Oh,
gig.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We
And-
got nothing but great feedback. By the way,
Oh, that's
everyone
nice, yeah.
everyone loved it, enjoyed it, was hanging out afterwards for longer because they loved the event and what you did, and like it was almost. I felt that the vibe of the show this year, in addition to what I'm bringing up now because you enhanced it, was very much more like you can stay and hang out and talk drums and get to know each other. A lot of connections were being made, and part of that was folks almost like not wanting to leave because they're like, "This is such an awesome day."
That's cool.
And that was
Yeah.
like for you to close it out in such a positive way really helped.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, when that was over, I went across the street, as you know, because I ran into you guys, to eat and drink, because it was just Nerve City, right?
Decompress.
And decompress, exactly. Yeah, we didn't do anything stupid, but at least I didn't. I don't know about you guys.
Well, yeah, we got rowdy. Yeah.
but
Right, they threw us out.
Yeah.
but it was just it was just great. And then here we are after the fact, and I'm over there with like John Pfeiffer, still talking about drums an hour later, and it was an inspiration for me coming out of that. So now I'm happy to do those kind of things, and as I mentioned at the shop, I'm available to teach as well. I'm not really going on the road until summertime. So if you're in or around the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area and would like to get together for an hour
me a call.
and talk about some stuff, yes, please call the shop, and we can set something up and get together. So if you missed it and you want to work on some stuff, or you just want to talk about stuff or whatever, like, I'm available for that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for doing that
Yeah.
first and foremost.
Thank you.
That was just an awesome collaborative thing where I didn't have to worry about that. We'll worry about this over here
Yeah.
because that's handled. Ed'll take care of it.
Yeah.
That was very nice from a showrunner's perspective to not have to worry about that. So I want to ask you a few questions. First and foremost, I like to talk about people starting out in their drumming career and stuff like that. But a really fun way I found to ask people that question to get that kind of going is once you kind of had the itch, what was that piece of gear or drum kit in the window or show that you went to and you saw that guy playing that and you were like, wow, if only I had that piece of gear. We know this not to be true now, but if only I had that piece of gear, I would be unstoppable.
yeah, that's funny you mentioned that, and I can tie this around to Neil too. He gave away he gave away a bunch of his kits, but the first time he did it, it was that beautiful like mahogany kit that he had, moving pictures and permanent waves, and it was an essay contest. And I mean, I was maybe 11, 12 years old. And so I wrote an essay basically saying, if I had this kit, I would practice
way.
like 24 hours. And he wasn't looking for that in the answer, of course. The thing was, why do you want these drums? Right.
That's interesting.
Write an essay and send it in. So I've never really been a gear guy. And I think it goes back to the fact that my parents didn't have a lot of dough. So my first drum kit was just a bass drum with a cymbal attached to it, a small cymbal too, maybe a 14. It might have even been like a hi-hat cymbal that just mounted onto the kick drum, and a snare drum. That was my first kit. When I first started taking lessons, I would do things with this kit.
Sure.
And then I got a bass drum with a mounted tom on it and a cymbal, snare drum, and a hi-hat.
Yeah.
So I got rid of the other stuff, and now this was my kit. No floor tom, but now I had a tom-tom I could play.
Yep.
And I had hi-hats, so I could learn that. Then I got a kick drum, snare drum, throne, because I was using like an old dining room table chair
Yep.
for years.
Yep.
And another set of hi-hats. So now I put those together. I took the snare drum from the first kit and took all the bottom stuff off and
Yep.
put it up next to the other tom-tom.
Perfect.
I didn't do the two bass drum thing at first. I took the older bass drum and set it on top of like milk crates
Made it a floor tom.
I made it a floor tom, exactly.
Awesome.
I made the old hi-hat crash cymbals. And so,
You're working with what you had.
yeah, and then I eventually got a couple of other cymbals, but it wasn't until I was, I think, a senior in high school that I got a drum kit, this Tama Swing Star kit that I still have, that was the same color.
Yeah.
Had like 4 toms and a floor
Yeah,
tom.
yeah.
Had 6, 8, and 10 roto toms. Now I could play along to Rush
Oh, yeah.
records
Yeah,
and,
there you
and all
go.
that. So, I got that at a steal back then. So I was never really that gear guy.
Yeah.
For me, it was the one thing I remember really, really wanting when I was younger was Octabands because of Stuart Copeland.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And to this day, I've never owned Octabands. So, if anybody from Tama is watching
be
this
time.
and wants to be generous, you know,
It might be time. I don't know.
I'll take the full 8.
We do.
the full octave.
We do. We haven't, of course, with our Icon series, we haven't announced too much.
Yeah.
But we got a guy. We got a Stewart guy.
Oh, okay, good.
We got a Stewart guy that we're caressing into doing it,
Uh.
and he's got the gear.
Can I take a guess at who it is?
Yeah.
Is it Jeff? Oh, okay,
No.
okay.
But does Jeff do anything else except Stewart Copeland? It sounds like I need to know who
Yeah,
Jeff is.
who's
Jeff's
Jeff?
Stewart's roadie in
Oh,
Nashville.
yeah.
And he's got the kit that Stewart recorded the Zenyatta Mondada record.
It's actually a tech that worked with Jeff
Oh, okay.
that has his
Letterman.
kit.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
Close enough for rock and roll.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
I'm like, almost.
Yeah.
Almost, Jeff. We'll see if he makes an appearance. Is they're tight.
That would be something.
That would be something. But I wanted to talk about. Obviously, we talked about your start with your gear and building stuff up. Eventually, obviously,
I just wanted a floor tom.
you just wanted a floor tom.
a floor tom.
We just wanted a floor tom.
And why
So-
is it that why is it that drum sets back then didn't come with the floor tom? A lot of times they didn't. Like I have a set for a Leedy set from the '60s, and it didn't have the matching floor tom with it. Why? I wonder why they did
My
that.
guess is that it did, but somewhere along the way it got lost. So these drums came from a drummer
okay.
that my father was in a band with for many years. And so he either decided to keep the floor tom or had a couple of pieces. Hey, I have these drums hanging around that I haven't played in forever, and
It was just missing that
that's
piece.
that's what we
Gotcha.
got.
Okay.
I have an educated thought on that.
What is it?
The fact that there are a lot of Leedy and Slingerland and some Ludwig era stuff where it's just kick, snare, and one rack tom.
Yeah.
If we back up to the drum set invention, which is an American thing that was developed here in the
Yeah.
States, before a drum set was a thing, you had a bass drum, you had a snare drum. I won't go through the whole thing, right? Bass drum, Ludwig comes out with a bass drum pedal.
Right.
That started to be a thing. Now you can play the bass drum and the snare drum. And what did they add on top of the bass drum? You've got blocks, maybe a little splash on a gnarly spring like we got sitting downstairs out front.
Chick web style.
The
Yeah.
the Chinese tom,
Right.
right? The Chinese tom, and that was it. And that was your only other drum. So the natural evolution is now we got the snare drum, the bass drum with a matching wrap. Well, what are we going to do up there? It makes more sense. Like, it was a long time, but it was, I mean, you see some 60s kits that don't have the floor tom like yours.
Yeah.
And then you see the exact same kit. You could order it with or without.
Yeah, and they were in the catalog that way.
Exactly.
And maybe that was the case. I don't know.
I don't know.
Unfortunately,
But yours was just that's the way it was, and
That's-
maybe
that's
the
what you
floor
had.
tom got lost.
that's
Okay,
what I
gotcha.
got.
Okay.
That's the
So,
spirit of a drummer. That's
I'm-
the pot and pan spirit of a drummer.
I made do. I made do.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about, obviously, eventually you had a hit with your band Vertical Horizon. Obviously, there's a lot of time and
A lot.
tons of gigs and playing. in
10,000
between that.
hours.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. But I want to talk about the later half of that as far as what that's like. Because we have a ton of our listeners and viewers are folks that have their own local band and they have a full-time job and they have a band they play on the weekends. They're the weekend warrior types like me.
Sure.
Right? Out here doing that kind of thing, hoping that maybe that'll turn into something one day. Can we talk about that transition time, that period from where, you're playing probably in a basement or a rehearsal space one day, and the next day, you start to see that take off, and then what that looks like from hometown guys to, the next level where you're opening tours, doing that kind of thing.
I mean, it's years.
Yeah.
It's years, and you have to be willing to make that commitment, which is another thing that I see lacking with younger people, because we live in a everything now, instantly kind of world.
Right.
No, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So I guess you're asking me to thread it together.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. As far as, I mean, even if that transition is years, what are the first rumblings start to look like when something might be happening to take you to the next level?
Well, so I mean, I played in bar bands out of high school. I did not go to college right out of high school. I decided I was going to take a gap year, and that lasted 3 years. But in that time, I put in the 10,000 hours. I was in a band, and we played a lot, and we played the stuff I was talking about before. We played Stax. We played Motown. We also played like the hits of the day. So it would be your typical sort of area,
Right.
you know, band doing weddings and bars and stuff like that. From there, I went to school and gigged here and there during school, but was focused on school. Coming out of school, I moved to I was in a band in Miami. And
Was your schooling music related?
it was, yeah. I
Okay.
have a bachelor's degree in music.
Okay.
So I was in a band in Miami, which is where I'd gone to school. And we were making a little bit of noise down there, not much. It was kind of a funk, almost like a Chili Peppers ripoff, except we, all respect to Anthony, we had a singer. So we were gigging around there, and it was apparent to me that being there was not the smartest thing, that maybe we should move to New York or something like that. Other guys weren't ready to do that. I was ready to make a move, so I left that band. And I moved to Boston and did a little bit of gigging here and there, but then I ended up going to see Vertical Horizon, learning that they were looking for a drummer, and joining the band. Now, they already had a little bit of a following in the college sort of roots circuit.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know if that's still a thing. I don't know if people still get in the van and go tour around the country and like lose money because they just love it and hope that someday it's going to catch.
Yeah.
So I was on like a pretty. There was a sort of a weekly salary when we were working that we paid ourselves, but
Okay.
it was. I mean, I joined Vertical Horizon to go on the road with them, and I made less than I was working at retail at the time. I was working
Yes.
in a bookstore.
Yeah.
But it was my dream, and it's what I wanted to be doing. So I just, you don't take no for an answer. You just go for what you do whatever you have to do to make that happen, make that dream happen, whatever it is. And so that's what I was doing, and that's what we were doing. And then it just, little by little, things snowballed. We ended up getting a record deal. We made a record. The Everything You Want record was pretty painful to make. There were a lot of growing pains involved. And we kind of were this thing, but we kind of wanted to be this thing. And we kind of went too far, and it was this thing, and we didn't like that. So we got another producer to kind of reel it back to this thing. And
Gotcha.
yeah, it was just, and we were all very green. I mean, we had done some recording here and there, but not with that kind of budget, not at that kind of studio, and with a producer and all this, and really everything on the line. Like, we might not get another chance to do this. So, we want it to be as good as it can be and all this other stuff. And then times were different. I mean, that record came out in, I think, September of '99, and it wasn't until July of 2000 that we actually had a hit record. And I don't know if record companies, or first of all, are there even record companies anymore that aren't doing anything other than regenerating catalog sales
Sure.
again and again and
Sure.
again?
Sure.
And then what record company is going to put the better part of a year into breaking an act? None of them. That doesn't happen anymore. So we were fortunate enough to be at the sort of end of that golden era of record making, where a record label spent that kind of time and that kind of money, which ultimately is your money.
Of course.
It's all going to come back via royalties, But to spend that kind of time in something that they believed in. So the industry itself, the outlook, the atmosphere of the industry was very different then than it is now, because the music industry used to be run by fans of music.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
once it started to get run by, bean counters and lawyers and whatnot, it became kind of what it is now, which is why you hear the same stuff on the radio all the time. So it was a different era. I'm glad I got to experience it. I mean, we played on a hit record. It was #1 for 1 week. And not a lot of people can say that. And I'm grateful for the whole experience. But ultimately, it was 9 years, but it felt like it went by in the blink of an eye. We did a follow-up record to Everything You Want called Go, which
That's a great record.
Thank you.
Awesome record.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know about it. I mean, I remember telling you about it, and you're like, "Oh, I had no idea." And
I
was
put
like,
it on immediately,
I said,
and I've
"Dude,
listened to it quite a few times. It's
better.
very good.
It's better than Everything You Want, in my opinion. Like, check it out. It's out there."
Yes.
But it didn't get the record company had changed hands.
Gotcha.
And everybody that was a part of the team that made Everything You Want the success that it was gone. And the new label president was not a rock and roll guy; he was a pop guy. And so, other than Foo Fighters and Dave Matthews Band, he kind of said goodbye to all the rock bands that were on RCA at the time, which was the record label. And so we were adrift.
Gotcha.
And shortly after that, I made the decision to leave.
So what? Just before we move on, during that time, what was different than what you expected? Because I know that I still have these thoughts of, not that that's my goal. Obviously, we've got the shop and everything going on here, but like, for a time, my goal was to play and for that to be my source of income and to have an album, not just release singles,
Make a music video on MTV.
You know what I mean? Like that was the dream, and then you got to live out a lot of those things, and I know you're extremely grateful for that opportunity. But what looked different? Obviously, we're talking different era, but what looked different? What came across different versus what you pictured happening? Or were you just open to whatever came your way?
It's a lot of work.
Okay.
It's a lot of work. I mean, we were going to 3, sometimes 4 radio stations a day in the morning to play morning shows the night after having done a gig, which was usually a club gig that didn't get done till 11 o'clock, midnight, whatever. And then have a gig that day. I mean, so we'd be up at 6 o'clock in the morning going to do the drive time and play acoustic and shake hands and thanks the radio stations for their support. And all this stuff went a really long way. I mean, I think it really helped explode that record into what it became, that song Everything You Want in particular. I mean, all that stuff is really hard work, and it's not the glamour kind of thing that you think it is. I mean, I played in a band that sold over 1 million records, and I'm no millionaire. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. I just saw an article recently about an Oscar-nominated actor who's like having trouble finding work and that kind of thing. And I mean, that's the reality of it all. Even now with the Doobie Brothers, I'm a sideman. I'm not a Doobie Brother. I'm a sideman, and it's a good gig, but it's not, what people think. What Google says my net worth is not even remotely close.
Yeah, there you go.
Excuse me, but it's so all that stuff is very grounding. Yeah. And for me, at the end of the day, all I ever wanted to do was be a working musician and be able to make my life doing that. And I've been able to do that pretty much since I was, I haven't had a job that wasn't playing music since I was 24 years old. 24, 20, maybe 25, if I'm doing the math right. But the day that I left my bookstore job because they were tired of me taking a leave of absence to go do a 6-week tour.
Sure.
Because I was working in between the tours. It was a great day. It was a great day. But even now, the Doobies stopped in October. We don't really gear up again until late May. So I'm looking to find as much as I can do in between time.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to dip into rainy day funds
of course
to pay rent or whatever. So
a huge moral of the story is develop your work ethic. You might as well start now, folks, because you're gonna need it. You're never gonna not be using that.
Yeah.
But that goes back to what you were just saying earlier, where everyone just has this. They need instant gratification, instant satisfaction. But just looking at that story there, you busted your ass for 9 years until you were even just on the road and playing what you wanted to do. But it takes time, and you put in that time, so you have to put in the time.
Yeah, and I mean, when I joined Vertical, they had an RV, which was, I thought I was on a tour bus, you know.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, we would sleep in campgrounds. We would sleep on people's floors. You know, we couldn't afford hotels.
Yeah.
You know, the day we started doing a hotel was glorious, but we had like a rotating chart of who was sleeping in the RV, who would get a bed.
Pull the box spring off, or
Yeah,
someone's like,
and then ultimately you just didn't care. You just climbed into bed with
Oh,
somebody.
yeah.
It's like, I'm gonna get some sleep, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, just that kind of thing. And then from there, all of a sudden, it was like, oh, we can afford to have our own rooms.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's
you
a
know?
process, man.
It's a process.
And you need to have the patience to be able to see it through. The patience and the passion are two big things.
They are
That's
huge
it.
things.
That's the key.
And yeah, and you need to be able. Again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You need to be able to see the forest for the trees, right? So, you either want to do this or you don't, and you need to be willing to sacrifice a lot and dedicate yourself wholeheartedly to this thing, and not listen to the noise, not listen to the naysayers, the people telling you no, that you should have something to fall back on. I did a session locally recently with a young guitar player, and you know, that I was talking about that kind of thing, and his parents were there and said, "Oh, you see, you should have something to fall back on." And at one point, I pulled him aside and sort of said, "Don't have something to fall back on. Like, if you need to do something to pay the bills while you're playing music, then you do that. But don't have something to fall back on, because you will fall back on it. You will fall back on it."
Yeah.
And you'll wake up one day and you'll say, "What happened? I wanted to be a musician, but I haven't been. It didn't go the way I expected." So it's a very, very dedicated thing that you need to apply yourself to. And I also can't stress this enough. It's been said by a million people in a million interviews. Don't be a jerk. Like, it is that simple. To be nice to me. It doesn't matter what you're doing on stage. It doesn't matter if people are, you know, are cheering for you and, oh my God, I want to take your picture and all that other stuff. None of that stuff matters. You just need to be as nice as you can. Leave places the way you found them, whether it's a club or a studio or a podcast area. All of that stuff just goes so far. It goes so far.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So eventually, a lot of your hard work paid off, and you got an opportunity for the Doobies gig, and you've done it for over 20 years.
It's been 20 years.
It's been 20 years now.
Yeah.
20 years with the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah.
An iconic band. And you
awesome.
got that. Not only do you get that gig, but you're not a little blip on the Wikipedia that Sean always looks at. When you see the band history, you're not a little green dot. You know what I mean?
Right.
You've sustained for that long as part of the touring group for
Yeah.
an iconic era. I mean, I came to see you out this for the first time this past year.
Yeah.
Out at the BB&T, not BB&T anymore. It's something
Whatever
else.
it is now. Yeah.
Some bank pavilion over in Camden that's almost Philly. That place. And it was just like, it was crazy to see that. Not that I didn't know that you were out there doing that, but just to be there and just be like, that guy's just like a super great local humble dude that comes in and nerd talks about drums with us.
That's what we do.
And
And
there he
he's
is
up there
on
just taking
stage.
care of business.
I know.
You know, and the more that I meet people and talk in the industry, the less that you know, the distance between sitting in the audience and being up on that stage is so much. There's a lot of hard work and obviously opportunities and stuff that separate it. But realistically, on a personal level, there's no difference. They're people. They're human beings on stage, and like when you meet someone that's really nice and humble or whatever, whether it's seeing Suckerman out there, whatever it is,
I got to shuffle my driveway, man.
that's it.
You know, I pulled the trash bins in from the
Yeah,
trash run.
you don't
this
have
morning.
a
Like,
you don't have a butler that's doing that
I
stuff.
do
for
not
you.
have a butler. No, I am not Sting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
some rock stars, some musicians do have a butler. I'm sure Lars Ulrich has somebody that takes care of his stuff for him. But, you know,
Yeah.
and then there's us. And then there's, you know, whatever. So,
You know, it's just what I do.
It's your job, man.
It's-
And I love your attitude about the whole thing, the realistic, grounded attitude. You're centered in gratefulness, and like that is your priority. And you can tell, you can feel it. I think that was something that really came across in your clinic at the drum show that people appreciated.
That's cool.
I think that was like, and I know that that's part of your way of being. So I think that's why I think it's so successful. Yeah, you can play the drums pretty good. Okay, Ed. All right. Yeah, he's a pretty good player. No, I'm just kidding. He's absolutely killer.
Still trying to get better.
But that element of it, I think, was translated really well. So could you just speak? You obviously mentioned about how like you're just one of the guys. You're not a Doobie brother per se.
Right.
Can we talk just briefly? We don't have to get super far into it. Unless
Sure.
you want to about the relationship between a lot of musicians, whether they're considered a hired gun or an assassin that comes in and does a gig versus on retainer versus this. You know, there's all these like romantic terms for it. But you're a working musician. And what you're doing is way more popular now than bands, learning how to play together, rising to stardom and staying together. That is not what most of these shows that we're going to nowadays is. That's not the reality of the band makeup.
Right.
So
yeah, it depends on who you go see. I mean, obviously there are still bands out there,
of course,
doing it, and I don't think bands will ever go away, and everything circles back, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I've had the experience of being in a band and being a band member, and I've now for the last 20 years had the experience of being a sideman as well, and they're both two very different things. When I was a kid, I dreamt about playing music for a living. There was another element to it that always appealed to me, and I figured if I could play music for a living, I could see the world. The travel aspect of it to me was a big part of the dream, as it were. You don't think about like I'm gonna be a business owner. I'm gonna have to pay people on the crew before I pay myself.
It is a business, yeah.
Type kind of stuff. You don't think about that kind of thing, budgets, that kind of stuff. Now, as a hired gun, I'm not thinking about merchandise designs. I'm not thinking about anything other than being 120% on stage every night and doing what's asked of me musically in the group. And chiming in where I feel like I need to chime in, and staying in my lane where I know I need to stay in my lane.
right.
Because I am a hired gun. Now, I've been there for 20 years, so I'm obviously doing something that they like. I'm obviously easy to get along with because I'm still there 20 years later. And every once in a while, I'll say, oh, man, I wonder if I should talk to the guys about whatever. And a lot of times, my drum tech, Jeremy, is kind of my barometer for this.
Okay.
I'll be like, hey man, should I say something? And he'll be like, yeah, I think you could probably, whether it's a set list suggestion or something like that. And then other times he'd say, yeah, I wouldn't do that. So
That's great.
It's nice to have someone like that.
Yeah,
to bounce those ideas off of. Yeah.
And because as it's been longer that I've been there, sometimes it's a little bit harder to keep my mouth shut about some things. But you have to remember what it is you're there for, and that's what I am there for. I'm there to play the drums, to play that music, to do my job within that musical realm, and also to represent sort of the company, as it were, as a human being. Don't trash the hotel room. Don't be rude to the hotel staff or whatever, which I never understood any of that stuff anyway. I did throw a lamp across the hotel room once.
I'm sure you had a good reason.
When I was in vertical. Yeah. And it was funny because something was going on in my life and I was ticked off and I needed an outlet.
Yeah.
And I was at the desk and there was a lamp on the desk and I grabbed it and I tossed it. And like the minute it left my hand, I started to laugh. I was like, you cliche, stupid, generic,
So you think you're
rock
hot.
star human being. You're such a fool, And I immediately, like the next time I was in the lobby, I went down and I said, and I sugarcoated it a little bit. I said, hey, I accidentally knocked the lamp off the desk.
Right.
Yeah.
I
I accidentally knocked the lamp 5-6 feet from where it was off
It
the
accidentally
desk.
shattered over there in the corner.
If you need, me to.
Of course.
Oh no, we have a bunch of those in store. Don't worry about it. These things happen. And I was like, okay. So I felt a little less guilty about
Nice.
it. That's what is a rock star. That's like one of the 5 rock star moments I had in my life.
That you clearly don't still feel guilty about at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would never think about doing that on this gig because I don't want something to get back to my guys like, hey, I heard you like berated the person that brought you breakfast because your bagel didn't have cream cheese or whatever.
Right. You don't want to have one of those stories.
No, absolutely
that staff
not.
passes around.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, so why'd you lose the gig? It's like, well, I decided it was time to leave. And it's like, no, you complained about something stupid and you got fired.
Yeah.
Like, who wants that?
Yeah.
There's no place for that. So, did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it did. Yeah. And I was just curious about like that dynamic, and it's a real thing.
It's a different dynamic. I mean, I'm friendly with the guys. Get the occasional Christmas card for whoever's. I mean, I don't know who's still doing Christmas cards, but and we talk on the bus about different things and all that other kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm an employee for a company.
And I don't know if you look at it this way too, but as I'm listening to you talk, you're kind of your own business too. And,
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So their business is, okay, they're the band and they pay everyone else. And they're, of course, paying you and you're a hired gun. But in a sense, because you're a drummer, that is your business.
I'm a salaried employee for the Doobie Brothers.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
So, and it's up to me if I want to change that to negotiate with them and all that other stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Cool. Well, if you guys are good, we'll pop into the very last thing that we do. This is new for 2025.
Is this the lightning round?
This is kind of the lightning round. It's called the last fill.
The last
So
fill.
there are three things that we like to touch on. These are common themes that we definitely wanted to reach out, things that kept coming up in our podcast. We definitely want to touch on with all of our guests. So, and the first one is to make everyone relatable. The second one is to kind of inspire a little bit, and the third one is really just leaning on to your experiences and kind of gives you an opportunity to reach out to people. So first and foremost, I want to ask you, do you have any train wreck or nightmare type stories relating to your playing or gigging experiences as a drummer?
I don't remember too many oh my god, like train wreck moments.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were some at the beginning, but nothing stands out in my head because I've just been doing this for so long, I guess.
Yeah.
I did faceplant on stage one night, walking back up to the drum kit for an encore, and I had some family in the audience.
Well, that's good.
Sort of waving to them, and I caught my foot on the step going up, and just bam right onto the drum riser.
Nice. Did you hear a big ooh?
No, I kind of got up and just brushed it off as if it was like part of the act or whatever, right?
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Do it twice, right? And it's not a mistake,
There you
right?
go.
So
That's good. Okay.
That was one, and it was like a hometown gig in Connecticut during the Vertical days when the song was just starting to take off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that one sticks out.
Can I ask you something specific?
Yeah.
Dropping sticks. How often does it happen? How quick are you on the recovery?
It doesn't happen often. It does happen because I hold the sticks fairly loosely, and I also use I don't use finish on my drumsticks. So sometimes they'll slide right through. I'm really quick on the uptake.
Nice.
Yeah. Unless you're watching me, hopefully listening wise, like you don't even notice.
Do you have any sticks stashed anywhere, or just stick bag on the floor?
I have I have a stick bag to my right that has stuff, and then I have a stick holder that holds one stick attached to the hi-hat stand if I have to go, if it's a left-hand thing and I need to grab something.
Grab it.
And the cool thing about that is I play traditional, so I can just put my hand right over the stick and pull it right out of the thing. So
There you go. Okay. Second question. Do you have a especially standout, rewarding moment or achievement that you've achieved in drumming, related to drumming? Whether it's a specific show you got to play, someone you got to meet along your journey.
Like one of those oh my god moments. Like,
Yeah.
oh my god, like what is
Yeah,
going
where
on?
it can
You
be
probably had a lot
especially
of them,
just
but-
cool to you. It doesn't have to be cool to everyone, but something that really was like, wow, humbling.
Yeah, there've been a couple of occasions where people that I admired growing up have seen me play, heard me play, and had really nice things to say.
Nice.
In 2016, Doobies were out with Journey, and it was the first year that Steve Smith had come back. Whoa. So I was like fanboying out because it was like the classic lineup, but with Arnell, and I was just, I mean, they did a concert from their Escape tour was on MTV when I was a kid, and I videotaped this thing. And I used to watch this thing after school, like religiously. I mean, I could play Steve's solo from that.
Great show.
Yeah, fantastic show. Live in Houston. It's out there. But, I mean, I knew it so well that when they eventually put that out, which I think they put out in maybe like the late 90s or early 2000s on a DVD and all that, I knew where all the fixes were. I knew where the vocal fixes were.
Oh, yeah.
And all that stuff because I have the original
OG
on the VHS.
There it is.
So, yeah, I knew where some of the video edits were different from what I have. Like the whole thing where they kind of cleaned up some stuff. But, yeah, so to have him say, like, oh, man, you have such a relaxed way of playing. I love listening to hear you play. It's like, wow.
Oh my.
You know, Neil Peart wrote about Vertical Horizon in one of his books. That was a moment. I got to meet Elvin Jones once.
Whoa.
Oh wow.
That was the first time people ask, like, you know, have you been starstruck? Yada yada, and it's like, well, I've had cool moments of meeting cool people, but I've never been like, oh my God, I don't even know what to say, like yada yada.
Yeah,
I've been like that with two people, and Elvin was one. And just this past year, I had the opportunity to talk for about 15 minutes or so with Paul Simon. And so that was another one, which was crazy. And I'm hoping for the trifecta because I'm doing a gig next week. When do you put this out?
Probably in about a week or so.
Okay, so
January.
I'm doing a gig January 23rd.
Okay.
It's a private event that the Doobies have been hired for, and Stevie Wonder's on the gig.
Oh shoot.
Very cool.
So I'm hoping to
Hoping to get a moment.
I'm hoping there's a moment there. So
I've seen Stevie Wonder at the NAMM show, and you know he was around, but
Yeah.
didn't get a chance to meet him, of course. But
yeah, I've never met him, so that would be something. But I've been able to chat with a fair amount of some of my musical heroes, and most of the people that I've talked to have been down to earth. And, you know, there's been like two people who were kind of like not exactly my heroes, but people I've crossed paths with that were kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I should
happens.
say. And I'm not going to name names.
No,
so
you don't have
course
to.
not.
One's a drummer though.
Of course not. Of course not. He's sitting right next to you.
yeah.
Sean Groff.
Yeah.
Sean Groff.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna name names, but I'll point fingers.
But his name rhymes with Sean Groff.
All right. So very very last thing. Do you have any advice that you'd like to give for anyone looking to achieve some of the things you've achieved, whether that's getting session work, doing the original band thing, making a career in music? Is there anything that stands out to you?
I do. So my favorite musician on the planet is actually a jazz guitar player named Pat Metheny. And he says a thing in his interviews a lot where he says, as a musician, just decide what it is that you want to do and then do that. Now, here's the thing. Way easier said than done.
Yeah.
For all the reasons we talked about earlier. For me, I knew some things that I wanted to do, musically speaking, and I just absolutely was not going to take no for an answer.
Right.
I want to be in a band, and I want to be a band that I love to be in, and if we do well, that's great, but, ultimately you want to be able, for me, I wanted to be able to make a living playing music.
Right.
And I was able to do that. And it took me a long time. I mean, by the time I was 20, I joined Vertical in 96, so I was 27 that year. And we didn't have a hit until 2000, so I was in my 30s. And none of that matters to me.
Right.
None of that matters to me. I've been able to continue to make a living playing music. I just did a, $70 hit playing some jazz in town here last night. It's work. It's work, and it was jazz, which is a little different from me. I was happy to because I love jazz, so I'm happy to be sort of playing it a little more often lately. And it was a last minute sort of sub thing.
Sure.
And so just say yes to everything, because you never know who people that you play with. You don't know where they may end up or who they're playing with. Or,
And they'll make a suggestion.
yeah, I mean, I think
Absolutely.
I read something a while ago. I think where the guy that's been playing drums for Billy Joel for a little while, he did a casual with like the bass player or the sax player or somebody. Did like I think it was a wedding, and it was just like, oh, I played with this guy and it was really good and really comfortable. Why don't we get him?
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know,
Bam.
you're like playing with Billy Joel. Like these things can happen, but you need to be laser focused. You need to not take no for an answer and turn off the noise. And this is really important. And this is one of the hard ones. You need to be where things are happening. You need to be where things are happening. If you want to be the guy that's playing those little 8-bar hits in and out of TV shows, you need to be in Los Angeles. If you want to sort of play jazz full time and really make a path in the jazz world and do it on a level that's like an international level, it's probably in your best interest to move to New York.
Yeah.
I mean, sessions, tours, all that kind of stuff. Nashville, L.A. also. I mean, these are where a lot of these things are happening. It doesn't mean that it can't happen from somewhere else, but your odds are infinitely better if you insert yourself into the areas, the situations that you want to be in.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like the underlining theme is don't take no for an answer. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, don't take
Just
no
do
for an
it.
answer. Decide what it is you want to do and then do it. It's a full-on leap of faith. It's the jump and the net will appear. It's the Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade when he takes that last step into the chasm and just kind of has the faith that his foot is going to land somewhere. That's what being in the music industry is like. And
man.
nobody's going to believe in you more than you. So
Yeah.
go with that.
Go with that. Love
Yeah.
it. Ed, thanks for being here, man.
My
Thank
pleasure,
you so
man.
much for coming out.
Yeah.
Sean,
Yes,
you were also here.
I was here.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I was
Thank
here in
you for
spirit.
being here as well. Thanks, folks, for checking out Drum Key Podcast. If you want to contribute to the show, I don't need to say like and subscribe and all that stuff. Just shoot us a DM. Come on. Reach out in messages. Call the shop. Walk into the store if you're local. If you guys don't have a local drum shop, and we always encourage support your local drum shop, but if you don't have one, we'll adopt you. We've got plenty of ways that we can communicate and support you remotely. Thank you guys for watching Drum Key, and we'll
Wait.
see.
Can I social media plug real quick?
Social media plug. Sorry, Ed. Go ahead.
That's okay. Ed Toth on Facebook, although I think I'm at the 5,000, but you can follow me there. I do most of my posting and whatnot on Instagram, Ed Toth Drums. Anybody's any questions, whatever, feel free to send me a message. I can't guarantee I'll get to it right away, but I try to get to stuff.
And also, before you go, let's plug lessons real quickly
Sure.
here too, because Ed is local here to Lancaster right now, and he's between tours. And if you want to take some lessons, give me a call here at the shop. I can get you in touch with Ed and taking lessons right here privately at Drums Etc. in Lidditz.
I do have a butler.
You do. You do. We're learning. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.